My name is Doug Holdreed, H-O-L-D-R-E-A-D. Energy security needs to be one of the first things we think about before we deploy another soldier, before we build another ship or plane, and before we buy another rucksack. Before we fill another rucksack. These are the words of former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Michael Mullen. I'm a member of the Pinon Canyon Expansion Opposition Coalition, which means that I've been attending these kinds of meetings, EAs and EISs, just like this one for about 6 years now. Grow the Army, Stryker Brigade, Transformation, Combat Aviation Brigade. During that time, range managers, commanding generals, garrison commanders, and even entire departments, like the Directorate of Environmental Compliance, have come and gone. But the Army's efforts to expand training at Pinon Canyon have been relentless. At first we thought that by attending meetings like this, our voices would be heard, and we convinced the Army to leave us alone. We now understand that Colonel McLaughlin and his successors probably can do no more than just, conform to the process. They can't make promises. They can't make the decisions to leave us alone. They can't do it any more than a civil affairs officer in Afghanistan can promise villagers there that they'll be left to live their lives in peace. So I'm not making my comment tonight to Colonel McLaughlin. I'm trying to speak, I'm hoping that somehow we can speak through this process to those who we've elected to represent us. I'm trying to speak to someone out there, to our senators, to Senator Udall, to Senator Bennett, to Congressman Tipton. In our democracy, things are supposed to be decided not by corporate lobbyists representing the military-industrial complex. They're supposed to be decided by our elected officials. Besides being a member of the Pinon Canyon Expansion Opposition Coalition, I'm also a member of an organization called Operation Free. Operation Free is a veterans group. And as veterans, we believe that our national security depends not upon ever-expanding militarism and the seizing and controlling of foreign oil fields, but in the development of energy independence. This is an idea that's really in agreement with the statement that I read by the former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Michael Mullen. As veterans, we believe that the development of wind energy will make future wars less likely and will become the next great economic engine for our national economy, providing jobs for returning veterans. There's a battle going on to determine who will be the first to lay claim to the super-adjacent private and public. There's a battle going on to determine who will prevail in a battle to control private and public airspace from the surface up to 500 feet in southeastern Colorado. Will it be claimed by the military, or will it be used for the development of alternative energy? This document was published by the Governor's Office on Energy. And there's a couple of maps in here that are really telling. One of them shows the areas of the state that have been identified as generation development areas. The largest area for solar development is in southeastern Colorado. The largest area for wind development is in southeastern Colorado. Another map in this document shows the military constraints that exist. And I'm sure you can't see it from where you're sitting, but southeastern Colorado is the greatest concentration of military installations which are regarded as detrimental to this development. Our elected officials have a choice to make about how they'll work to ensure our national security. Will they do it by advocating for corporate interests or by advocating for the growth of the military industrial complex, or will they do it by promoting the development of alternative energy in our state? By the way, I have a bunch of extra copies of this if anybody would like one.
Mr. Bill Salzman, be followed by Monovina Vodovi Rinker.
Yeah, my name is Bill Salzman, S-U-L-Z-M-A-N. I live in Colorado Springs, and this issue has taken a lot of my time, going back as far as Doug talked about. This is about a 6-year process, and so there's a lot of context out there. And I guess I'd like to start with what I think is an important part of the context, and that is that there are really 5 branches of our current military apparatus that is pursuing aerial warfare. We know about 4 of them: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. But there's also the CIA, which has its own plans. And you could, if you looked at all of those other agencies that employ aerial warfare, they all have more or less the same package we're talking about here. And the reason we're being asked for more and more airspace is there's more and more need to train with all of these instruments. Another bit of just general backdrop is the Army has recently, just yesterday, said they're going to cut back maybe as many as 15 brigades and a total of maybe 80,000 troops. But yet we see a major increase in that aerial arm. So that's kind of the background of why we'd be adding a brigade here while other places are going to lose them. And maybe even Fort Carson will lose one of its current brigades. So that's just background stuff. Getting into some of the specifics of the EA. There's a statement in paragraph 4.1.2.3 concerning the special use permit that Fort Carson has with the Forest Service. And the Forest Service wrote a very strong comment letter in one of the earlier EAs that you saw mentioned here, in which they challenged whether or not that agreement was being honored by the Army. Technically, they're supposed to be able to cancel that, but in practice, they don't have the leverage to do that. The Forest Service can't take on the Pentagon, and they know it. So all they can do is maybe complain a little bit. But their contention is that the facts on the ground now, as compared to what they were in 2007, are radically different. They have 16 sites that Fort Carson uses for landing and takeoffs in the National Forest. Another federal agency that is heavily impacted by off-post training, and the majority, I believe, of the training of all these machines we're talking about will happen outside the boundaries. It's not like you assume an Army base contains the area in which the other elements of the Army trains. But with helicopters and airplanes, that's not the case. But the BLM, as opposed to the Forest Service, doesn't have a special use permit. They have said all of this use of 24 sites, and they're seeking a lot more, the Army is casual use. And therefore, there's no need for a formal agreement. Fort Carson also maintains at least 8 landing zones in what's called the Eastern Helicopter Training Area. And that, again, is something that is employing all of these resources that we're talking about. It's very likely that the Army will expand its use of Pinon Canyon for live fire training, because they're going to have to do a lot more of it. So how can they do that? Does this agreement give them the right to do that? I would say that this following paragraph from Chapter 2 of the EA gives them sort of carte blanche. Environmental and training conditions, factors beyond the Army's control, such as world events, troop deployments, and climatic conditions, affect the implementation of training. Environmental and training conditions are dynamic. Therefore, training activity under the proposed action is a process by which the Army would monitor and respond to changing conditions in order to sustain the land for training and provide maximum troop readiness. That, to me, is sort of a trapdoor, a blank check that would cover major revisions in what is stated in the EA.
Bonavina Vidovi Rinker, followed by Mrs. Joanne Neiman.
Yeah, it's okay. My name is Honorina Vidovi Rinker, VEDOVI-RINKER. And I am a concerned citizen. I wish to address the life issues involved in the proposed military expansion, specifically of the CAB Brigade at Fort Carson. I'm here to represent the voiceless ones who are directly impacted by these proposed military maneuvers in Colorado Springs, at Pinon Canyon, and in the airspace that connects the two. I speak for the earth and for all that lives here in this land, especially for the ones who are not here with us tonight, who should be considered because they are a part of the interconnectedness of all life. We object to this proposal because basically it is for death, not life. Let us imagine how this proposed military expansion at Fort Carson actually impacts the beings who live there. Here. Picture the defenseless ones, the birds, the butterflies, the deer, the rabbits, the foxes, and countless beings that have their homes here, besides humans. They deserve to live in a healthy environment just as we humans do. What will this do to their habitat? It will destroy it. Vehicles, helicopters, ground troops will destroy their fragile homes. I'm sure they would object to drones as well. Think about where we are putting our energy with this proposal. How can this benefit our children and our children's children by spending millions of dollars on what is in reality a killing machine that destroys Colorado's pristine environment as well as that of other countries? The women and men elders of the 6 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, who, by the way, gave us our Bill of Rights, heard all citizens' concerns before deciding upon far-reaching changes in their communities. Changes were considered collectively as they recognized that the consequences of any big actions would impact the generations to come, 7 generations to come. We would be wise to do the same as responsible citizens. We should act as stewards of the land, not murderers. I'm asking you to think about what you are creating. Look at the consequences of these proposed actions from the point of view of life itself. If we continue to regard other life forms on this planet as inconsequential to our rapacious military expansionist needs, this attitude will eventually cost us economically, not to mention spiritually. This corrupts our humanity. We will be sanctioning the creation of structures that perpetuate more desecration and violence in this land and in the world at large. It is truly sad that a 21st century woman would have to appeal to the powers that be by mentioning the almighty dollar first in order to ensure the protection of life in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Joanne Neiman, be followed by Mr. Alex Trowbridge.
Joanne Neiman, N-I-E-M-A-N. Well, I was taking a look at the EA this afternoon, and one of the things that stood out for me is that the thing that attracts the Army as much as it does to this part of the world is the fact that it's such a lovely place to raise children and to raise a family, and because we provide excellent social services, education, medical services, and so on. And this is all true. But these things come out of the community, and they're paid for by state and local taxes and local charitable contributions. Those things are paid for by the people who are citizens of this community and who shop in the stores here, pay their taxes, and so on and so forth. They're not provided by the Army. They're there for the Army. They're not being provided by it. Now, what I want to know is, what good things has the Army brought to us? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Neiman. Mr. Alex Trowbridge, followed by Ms. Rita Ague.
My name is Alex Trowbridge, Trowbridge. And I just wanted to state that the governmental estimate for the spending was read to be $4 billion. And I just wanted to ask, how can you spend $4 billion on this military expense when our education budget for Colorado State was cut $1.1 billion this year? How can you spend $4 billion on this military expense when our National Cancer Research Fund is $5 billion for the entire year? I just want you to deeply consider the necessity of this helicopter brigade and think about the budgeting of this year and if it's necessary to actually have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rita Ague, be followed by Mr. Bill Durland.
Hello, everybody. Apology first. I do apologize.
Yeah.
I'm a truth teller.
Speak your name.
And it is Rita Walpole Ague. And I confess, I am also here for a lot of people who cannot be here and speak to you all. I don't go looking for things to get involved in. I retired and put away both my journalism and legal hats, and guess what? busier than I should ever be at this point in time. And I can't say no when the pleas come in for help. And over again, the pleas have come in. Perhaps most disturbing, or right up at the top, are the pleas that come in from the VA. The people who work in the VA, provide medical care, are angsting. I can't even begin to explain to you the tears that I have seen coming down the cheek of a very highly credible doctor. His comment to me was, "This is not practicing medicine." Over and over again, I hear that the hands are being tied in the dental department, in the pharmaceutical department, and throughout provision to vets. We do not need expansion at this point in time. The whole country has recognized that we have a new way of spelling the word wars. W-A-R $. We have made incredible profits for the 1%. Expansion of Fort Carson is going to spend incredible amounts that we have to be putting into far more humanitarian causes and pockets of people who are doing their best. I am speaking now as a woman, as a mother. We have to care for each other. And we have to do that worldwide. Time to get out of the constant war mode and into a lot more care, giving, and share mode. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Durlin will be followed by Mr. Keith Goodwin.
Good evening. My name is Bill Durland, D-U-R-L-A-N-D. I'm a 30-year-plus resident of Colorado Springs and Trinidad, Colorado, an Army veteran who served in the regular Army and reserves from 1954 to 65, and as a captain in JAG Reserve 67 and 68. My profession is as a civil rights attorney and college professor. In 1994-95, I was a member of the Fort Carson Environmental Restoration Advisory Board, and have served on state and local environmental boards beginning in 1965. I opposed the stationing of a new combat aviation brigade at Fort Carson, as I did similar military expansion attempts in 1984 and recent years on various issues of environmental protection, financial considerations, and human rights, including the rights of persons and homeowners living near the fort from Colorado Springs to Trinidad. Tonight, I will speak specifically to one issue because of the time restraints. I find inexcusable the deployment and use of weapons, if not of mass destruction, certainly of cowardly assassination, called Gray Eagle Predator attack drones, that I understand from a Q&A disclosure will be stationed here within 2 years, although not revealed in your original documents. This legal basis, the legal basis for my opposition is the constitutional and international obligations previously signed by representatives of this nation, including language which makes the use of aggressive stealth predators to assassinate by trespassing borders against national sovereignty a war crime. Our nation has committed itself to these obligations by word and honor. Some of these are the U.S. Constitution, the UN Charter, the Nuremberg Charter prohibiting war crimes, crimes against peace and humanity, and numerous treaties making part of our domestic law. Furthermore, it is a crime that when citizens don't have enough necessities, we continue to bankrupt them and this nation by extravagant expenditures on military adventures. We've fallen into a trap set by Al-Qaeda and bin Laden, where we have cooperated and become complicit in their fundamental and ultimate aim, which was not only to destroy buildings and American lives, but to destroy the very basis of our democracy by taking away the human rights of American citizens through our own destruction since 9/11 of the rule of law and the Bill of Rights. I would like to remind us of two statements relevant to my comments about human rights. Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence about the self-evident truth that all persons are endowed, not by governments, but by our Creator, with human rights that cannot be taken away from us, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We sometimes forget what comes next, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted. It's not the other way around to secure the government's rights. It is a fallacy to base this latest Fort Carson request on a theory that more drones or helicopters will secure our rights. What secures our rights are those constitutional and international documents that are designed to bring us what the preamble to the U.S. Constitution declares should be the purpose of government: a more perfect union, justice, domestic tranquility, general welfare, and the blessings of liberty. It was Martin Luther King Jr., the great Christian pacifist, who said, "All we say to America is to be true to what you say on paper," referring to our human rights documents. Finally, as a member of the Religious Society of Friends Quakers, I remind us of the peace gospel of Jesus Christ, who calls us to love our enemies. Love is the only power against which there is no defense, and the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend.
30 seconds.
Violence only begets violence. Military empires are not the way. And whom would Jesus bomb anyway?
Thanks, sir. Mr. Keith Newman, followed by Loring Werble.
Trying something new. I'm a commissioner from Otero County, and the name is Keith Goodwin, Goodwin. Got it right up there. My fellow commissioners in Otero County always requires me to have some notes and overhead and so on when I'm trying to make a presentation, because it keeps me focused. They always give me the sign like this to stay focused. What I'm going to try to do is focus on what is the intent of the EA. So let's see. Copying this back up again, as showed earlier, the important notice that I wanted to bring out, again, that was done, is the new items that's missed, that's not in the original process. We have an opportunity to to present evidence that will facilitate this decision process right here. The rest of this is not really important at this particular point. Our emphasis is to have a yes emphasis on, is there a significant impact? And so my computer analysis starts fitting in on me, and I'm saying I need to analyze the facts to make a decision. And so I did some looking around, and another slide I found, and to measure the importance that I'm showing of this decision, is this new item here that I found on the internet on a government site. And if you notice the importance, we made one decision already. We found out that we're not excluded from doing a EA or an EIS. We have to make a decision. So at the EA, the purpose behind this, from what I gather in my readings, is that it was undeterminable whether or not there's a significant impact to the area. And so the purpose of an EA is to describe what the proposed action is, and to find out if there's any impact to the area, significant impact. Keep in mind the word significant. There's a difference. But if you notice on this chart, which is also from one of the federal agencies, is we have one shot right here. The environmental assessment, we have one decision. No impacts, do you see any other information down here? The red straight, oh, I'm sorry. It goes right straight from no impact, bang, to get the job done, okay? And I found this on several federal sites. And so the important part is to come up with significant importance. By not knowing about all of NEPA problems and activity and so on, I did another research, and I found at the Council of Environmental Quality, Executive Office of the President, an item that says a citizen's guide to the NEPA, having your voice heard. And what I wanted to do is thank Colonel McLaughlin for having our voice heard before the decision is made. It's always hard to come up with it, try to battle a decision once it's already been made. We have an opportunity, and I hope that it's an honest opportunity, to have our opinions and our stuff evaluated prior to a decision process. The items important on coming up with compliance is how will these change, how will these affect the system, environment, human, biological, historical, on down here. What study and monitoring requirements is needed to be sure that it shows the impact should create in the future. Section 1508.9 environmental assessment just says that the importance is to, is there a significant impact? Significant means is done in two different ways, with context and intensity. Context is that significant varies with the setting of the proposed action. For instance, in the case of site-specific action, significance would usually depend upon the effects in the locale rather than in the world as a whole. So the important here is there's a difference between Pinon Canyon and its environment and its weather and its environment and Fort Carson. So we have to keep those two separate to be able to go with that. The importance is there is impact on, we hear about wildlife, we hear about historical structures, we have the Santa Fe Trail. Obviously there's things that is impacted, and with that we do need to have a full EIS to do a full study on what the impact is, and more importantly, the mitigation of those items.
Conclusion?
Got it. The cumulative impact is a result from individually minor but collective significant actions taking place over a period of time. We heard in Monday meeting that Los Angeles County commissioners issued a letter saying that they were wanting to support the idea of having a full EIS. And coming up this week, I wanted to mention that Otero County, Bend County, Baca County, Crowley County, and Pueblo County commissioners will have all of that in their sessions coming up this week, making a statement at that time, and we'll be issuing a statement at that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, Loring Werble, followed by Mr. Lon Robertson.
Hi, I'm Loring Wirbel, W-I-R-B-E-L. I write about space and avionics and the environment, and had been somewhat concerned hearing what Bill and the PCEOC had said about the Combat Aviation Brigade coming in. And my concern rose in the late part of last year when some of the documents emerged that sooner or later Gray Eagle drones would be following the several varieties of helicopters would make up the brigade. But what really drove this home was taking a drive past Fort Riley at Christmas time. I've been past that area several times, and seeing many of the helicopters that are making up their brigade already in place, and seeing Fort Riley really become a significantly different Army base, and knowing that their Gray Eagle drones are going to be here momentarily, and recognizing that what is happening in Fort Riley now is what we'll be seeing in Fort Carson in the future. And you have to keep in mind, Fort Riley is a relatively isolated base. This town of Manhattan is fairly close. You got some protected river areas, but there's just a lot of grassland, a lot of farmland, which in and of itself is a pretty major thing, but not the degree of archaeological sites, BLM, U.S. Forest Service type of land that we see around here. And here we're talking about a base that is adjacent to an urban area as well as to Pike National Forest and several BLM properties. Now, the commissioner that just was up here talked about individually minor but collectively significant actions, and Bill talked earlier about the whole notion of carte blanche or the foot in the door. And I've seen this take place in both the helicopter brigades and in the Air Force Special Operations request out of Cannon Air Force Base to bring V-22 Ospreys in for training with drones. You always get the drones added to the package after the fact, so you can't really complain about them when anything's going on. You also don't hear a lot in the EA process about the heavy use of USFS BLM lands. Everything focuses on the environmental effects along I-25, along the 115 Fort Carson corridor, Buttsfield, etc. But the real big impact, of course, is when training takes place along Rampart Range Reservoir, Mount Herman Road. And I can tell you, living on the eastern ridges east of the Air Force Academy, I've seen what impact is when the stealth fighters fly low over my house and I hear the sonic booms. You're not going to have those kind of noise impacts from helicopters. However, even at the 500-foot level, and certainly as you get more and more of these nap-of-the-earth Route Hawk type of flights going on to a place like Rampart Reservoir or along Mount Herman Road, and you start seeing clusters of helicopters and clusters of drones in regular training, you're going to have a really big impact in what should be pristine natural areas. So remember, you're not just talking about Buttsfield, Wilderness Road, etc., etc. You're talking about the package. And they don't talk a lot about the package at the early stages of EA. That is brought in under the doorway, after the fact, and all of a sudden you're looking at an EIS that includes drones, that includes larger and larger training in Forest Service areas. So let's get a real handle on the real size of impact we're talking about. And I see in an area so close to the Forest Service, so close to an urban area, that if we were to get even an iota of the impact from Fort Riley, and I think we're going to get many times the impact of Fort Riley, it would simply be unacceptable to station a CAB here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lon Robertson will be followed by Joseph Sanchez.
Thanks, Rob. Lon Robertson, R-O-B-E-R-T-S-O-N. Lon Robertson, I'm the president of the Pinon Canyon Expansion Opposition Coalition. There are a lot of speakers here tonight that spoke to this EA and the concerns from a lot of different perceptions, different points of view. And I'd like to relay a bit of background too from our perspective and how we ended up here today as it relates to this EA and other measures. In 1983, the Pinon Canyon Maneuver Site was created. It was created in a way, in a manner, which in a lot of people's minds, even the leaders that did it then, nowadays say was probably improper and inappropriate. It was, the majority of it was taken by eminent domain. It forced people off their ranches. It forced soldiers onto property that probably wasn't real conducive to the type of training that they were doing at that time. It's been used very little. It was used fairly heavily at first, and then it was backed away from because of the type of ground that is there. Of course, you get back to the days of the Dust Bowl and otherwise, you understand that our country is very fragile. And that gets back to the point that Keith Goodwin was saying a while ago, is that different areas have different issues as far as environmentally and otherwise. One of the uses that has been very accepted or very adapted to that region, of course, is ranching, agriculture, and thus the reason that we have become very concerned, especially some 6 years ago when we found out that they were looking at expanding Pinon Canyon. When you look at expanding Pinon Canyon, the 235,000 acres that they have there, that they weren't using a whole lot at that time. In fact, very little when you consider the amount of training that was on there. and you consider the amount of cattle production, the amount of tax dollars that were lost to there, the amount of loss versus the amount of gain for any region of Colorado was reversed. I mean, you didn't get anything back for what you paid. The cost was too great. Now then you have businesses up here that will definitely benefit from the military and their soldiers and so forth being here. A lot of us are from military families. A lot of us have, my father served in World War II. He and my son served in the Army, in the Navy. There are a lot of people that are veterans in the area of which we're looking at down there as being taken over. And so it's not an anti-American or anti-military issue. That is not why we're here. It gets back to almost everything everybody else here was saying tonight and what we've been saying for the last 6 years, is we have a right to our private property. We have a right to our lives and our livelihoods. We have a right to protect that. And whenever you have somebody coming at you again and again and again, and I'm using that paraphrase from the other night from Jim Harold, who said that, we've been over this again and again and again. This EA is just another example of an attempt in our minds, we've not been proven otherwise, that there's trying to take our land by air or by ground. We have concerns that that is what's happening. There has been no effort made by the Army or otherwise to indicate that they are going to do other than continue to try to make that happen. Thank you. So, I'm almost there. So I guess in my mind, I would like for people to understand where we're coming from, is that we are coming from years and generations of families growing up in that region, protecting that which is ours, and we'll do it till the end of days. And we hope that there's a better way to spend that $4 billion, and I think that it was said earlier here tonight, we have veterans that need it. We have people coming back from the war, Iraq and Afghanistan, that have brain injuries. That $4 billion could be spent right here. Couldn't it be spent, utilized here to help the soldiers that this community has built up and supported, rather than keeping them going? I think that says all I need to say. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. All right, we do have some people that are signing up here at the last minute. What I'm going to do is go through everybody that originally signed up. So bear that in mind. If you can make your point in a little sooner than 5 minutes of that original listing, please do. If not, the other folks are going to have to submit their comments in a different medium. All right, it's all yours, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Sanchez, S-A-N-C-H-E-Z. I'm in agreement with a lot of what I heard this evening. I want to remind those of you who are new to this, we won't call it a fight, we'll call it a friendly discussion. Someone said that they don't think maybe Colonel Laughlin can do a whole lot. I'm sorry if I don't get your tag correct there, but I've heard people say that he's a pretty friendly guy and somebody that they feel like they can work with. And it's unfortunate that sometimes these things are just processes that we go through. But I want to remind you all, and make some of you aware that promises were made when Pinon Canyon was first taken by eminent domain. And those promises included that they wouldn't take more land. And yet those acquisitions and those attempts came at us time and time again. Promises were made that live munitions were not be used, and yet those live munitions with depleted uranium at times have also occurred. And this is why there are people in the citizenry who may be very loyal and very much in love with their nation, still frustrated that they feel like they have to fight against the very military that many of them served in themselves. It's a frustrating experience for the citizens of southeastern Colorado. I'm aware of something that some of you may or may not be aware of. I do a lot of research. I'm a journalist. And that is that there's something called the Project for a New American Century. It's something that Dick Cheney was very involved in. And basically it calls for war for the next 100 years. And that's a horrible thing to think about for me personally. And I don't think it's necessary, and I think that we all need to become more active. We were told at the beginning of this that we don't want to posture against war. There's some other place to posture against wars. And it was called the war. What is it? Is it Iran? Is it Afghanistan, Libya? What are you talking about? Here's my card. If you know there's a place where I can posture against war and not get my head beat, tell me. Because I've covered citizens for Occupy, and they're getting their heads beat for saying they don't like how things are going. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. You'll be followed by Mr. Evan Weissman and Ms. Lori Holdring. You did good on time, too.
I'm Evan Weissman, W-E-I-S-S-M-A-N. I might just piggyback a little bit off our last speaker there. The idea of posturing against the war. I have trouble with the word war as kind of a clean noun like that. There's so much more to war than just that. And
help me out here.
I'm helping you out. The reason I'm saying this is because if we were talking about a poop sandwich factory that was coming in, okay, we would be able to posture against the poop sandwich and the poop that was coming out of this factory. I'm sorry to make a sort of a gross thing there, but we would be allowed to talk about it. And then if at this factory, if the things that were being made there were getting into the water, or were being loud, or eating, or our children were eating these things, we would talk about that. And so I do think there are some similarities, that the point of this is war, and war is not a clean little noun. War is dirty, and war involves a lot of horrible things. But we are talking about the environmental assessment, and the environmental assessment, if we're to begin to be serious about this, we wouldn't go through such motions, because it's a joke. The environmental impact of the end situation of what this is war, and it is the worst thing possible for the environment, both here at Fort Carson, Pinon Canyon, and for the entire globe. That is what the preparation is for. And the introductions that came from, I'm sorry I forget your name, but the folks down at Fort Carson, there's 13 people who are working, and I'm sure doing great work. And I work at a nonprofit, and I would love to have 13 other people helping me out doing what I was doing what I do. And I think a lot of people say that what we do is for some human good. And I'm sure that all of you individually are doing good things. But I do question, my point is, I do question, it seems as if, putting aside the environmental assessment, because that seems like it's an obvious one, that it seems a bit more like a jobs and economic impact that we're talking about. And I don't want to bring more jobs here that the end goal is something that is bad. I would like to bring more jobs here where the end goal is for human uplift. And so that's my point. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Marshall. Ms. Lori Holdring, you'll be followed by Mr. Jay Samino. You'll correct me when you come up, I'm sure.
It's Jamino.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Holdreed. That's H-O-L-D-R-E-A-D. I'm a concerned resident of Trinidad, Colorado, and I'm married to a veteran, and I really don't like this idea that we have to say things like that to prove our patriotism. That's kind of ridiculous. Basically, I've been standing with my Rancho neighbors through 6 years of assaults on our community and the character of our community. We've been watching the character of our community be negatively impacted for 30 years now. The ranchers are holding strong, the industry is strong, we have hope that that's going to stay strong, but frankly, we don't feel that we have a voice in deciding the future vision for our corner of the state, and that's wrong. We're citizens, we have businesses, we have lives, and the character of our community is the way we want it to be, and we want it to continue to be an agriculture-based area. I'm not a rancher, I just work at the college and live in Trinidad, but I moved to Trinidad because of Trinidad's character. And I don't want us to become a satellite of Colorado Springs military based economy. And I know that Colorado Springs is looking at branching out and trying to get strong in other areas. Down in our area, we've had energy companies looking at us as the strongest area for wind-based sustainable energy, and they've turned their backs on us. They've looked at it and they've turned their backs because they know that they're likely to face opposition from the Department of Defense, and it's financially unfeasible to even take a real strong look. So that impact is not included. We need an EIS. An EA does not cover the economic impact from sustainable energy companies that are not looking at our area anymore. So I think that needs to be included. I just think it's ironic. The Native Americans that lived in our area never realized they had to claim their property. They didn't even imagine that you had to claim your property in order to keep it safe and keep it for your own use. Then after that, the Hispanic settlers never dreamed that they would need to claim the rights to the river water passing through their land. It just never occurred to us that we had to claim that. Then later, the people living in the canyons around Trinidad never realized they had to claim their mineral rights to keep the oil and gas companies off of their property. And I'm not saying I'm against oil and gas. I know that we need to do some of that, but the people that don't want it don't have a choice on their own property. And now, here we are, fighting for the right, we're having to claim the sky over our heads as sacrosanct and part of our property rights. But now we know that we better get proactive and do it before it's claimed by the Department of Defense. So we are officially claiming that the right to the land over the air over our property is ours. And if you fly below 500 feet, we will call it in as a trespass. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Jay Cimino. Be followed by Mary Springer. I can't read the last of that, Mary. You'll have to help me out.
Good evening, I'm Jay Cimino, and I am a citizen. I have a home, I live here in Colorado Springs. Cimino, C-I-M-I-N-O. I live here with my family in Colorado Springs, and I have a home in Trinidad. I don't know if you've seen it, but today it was reported that the Army plans to cut the number of brigades from 45 brigades to 32 to reduce the armed services by 80,000. Fort Carson is regarded as the country's premier Army base. In my years, I have lived in 6 different cities. I was born and raised in Trinidad, but the greatest city of all, in my opinion, is Colorado Springs. We live here in Colorado Springs in a culture of giving. I think it was started many, many years ago, over maybe 100 years ago, by Spencer Penrose, and he continues to give through the Al Pomar and through other great foundations here in Colorado Springs. The Army has contributed to this culture of giving in ways that most of us can't even fathom. There are soldiers and enlisted officers that live their lives each and every day by giving. supporting them. That they and their families, both active and inactive, have sacrificed and enriched this great city. We need to support them in so many ways that we can better work with them in partnerships, in community programs, in business, social, showing appreciation, just to name a few. Our soldiers have served in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and all over the world, and in many cases, many times. Colonel McLaughlin will be returning to Afghanistan this spring after already serving twice in Iraq, and that's not a vacation. I don't think that would be considered a vacation. Our new Commandant, Major General Joe Anderson, has just returned from Afghanistan.
What about posturing? No posturing.
For the third time. The environment. The issue before us today is the environment and what harm will be done, particularly as we begin to get the helicopter brigade. The brigade will assist our soldiers to keep the peace in the 21st century.
All right.
Yes, keep the peace and keep the enemies off our shores. My concern is not about expanding the military. It's about preserving it. Yes, the environment. Yes, to all of that. We must put the environment, we must safeguard the environment, no question about it. But we must also put it in proper perspective. We need to support our soldiers to save lives and protect the environment. The Army has a great record of being stewards in the environment.
All right, sir.
One last comment here, sir.
Good copy. Okay, so
we need to stand up and be stewards of our fighting soldiers. When was the first time or the last time that you said thank you for your service? We need to stand up and preserve this country and this great country of ours on earth, the greatest country on earth. To quote JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The Army will lose 13 brigades, 80,000 soldiers, the size of a medium-sized city. What that means is they will be asked to do more with less. I'm confident our military can accomplish this mission, but they need the community's continued support. What can you, and yes, any one of us, do to continue to support this great Army? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that was our meeting. Okay, I let one of them go earlier that was on the other side. I apologize. I got sucked in. Okay, it happens when you're brain dead like this. Okay. All right, we'll balance this out as we go. But thank you for your comments, sir. Mary, be followed by Stephen Harden.
Hi, I'm Mary Sprunger-Phrase, and the last name is Sprunger-F-R-O-E-S-E. And I live in Colorado Springs. And this is an environmental assessment that we're making comments about, and I would like to speak a little bit to the social and spiritual environment in Colorado Springs that will be affected definitely by if this cat brigade does come. I just recently met with a former soldier who is not telling the same story as some have. As an organizer with the Iraq Veterans Against the War, he told us of some very deep pains that he has and that he will have to deal with for the rest of his life because of what he was involved in. And he told us about the need of many soldiers to have someone to talk to about the trauma that they have experienced and the healing that they need. That's the kind of work I would like to do. That's the kind of work I wish all of us would do, and that's where I'd like to see the money go. And I'd like to see it be the last soldiers. And I'd like to see all of them come home. I'd like to see all of them healed. And I'd like to see us give them new jobs in building life. Martin Luther King had an army of nonviolent soldiers. They accomplished what no army with all the firepower on earth could have accomplished in this country. Today, he's recognized with a holiday and with people saying he taught people how to get along. Yes, he did. He also suffered incredibly, as did his family, as did all the people who were part of his movement. He did not think that change would be easy or that it would come without suffering or without giving up some of what we think of as security. But he called us to a beloved community, and I think that's possible, and I think it's possible when each of us is willing to make a choice. And I hope that we will choose life, whether it's for the protozoa or the many things I don't even know about that exist, or whether it's for the lowly human race that indeed is a little lower than the angels. But we've been given incredible magic for the short time that we are here, and we can do it together, and I don't believe that increasing our military presence is the way to do it. I think all of us need to be transformed, and I think we can transform these structures. I think we can be nonviolent soldiers for the sake of all the children that come after us.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Harden, be followed by Peter Springer.
I'm Stephen Handen, H-A-N-D-E-N, just a citizen of Colorado Springs. I was surprised by the number of people that identify themselves at the beginning of this as being, where the word environmental is in your job title. It seems to me, I don't know what the argument is, that you bring in 125 helicopters, 2,700 new soldiers, and all this stuff, it's going to have a negative impact on our environment. I don't know, what else can you do? It's going to disturb wildlife, it's going to disturb the sky, the noise, the pollution. You burn tens of thousands of barrels of oil over our city and our area. It's got to have a negative impact. I agree. If we're closing up these brigades all over the country, and somebody told me, I don't know if this is exactly correct, the Pentagon already owns 40 million acres in this wonderful country of ours. When is enough enough? If we're closing up brigades someplace else, put these helicopters in those places. If we've got all this vacant real estate, let's use it. Who's driving locally? Who's driving building new projects here when we got all this excess stuff around the country? Well, somebody stands to make a lot of money for this thing coming in. So it's driven not by national defense. It's driven by corporations that profit from this particular thing, especially if we've got this vacant real estate. So that's one of my objections to the coming of this CAB. And I would agree with one of the former speakers, yeah, we ought to honor the soldiers that are here, but I don't think we have to bring more in. We've got enough here right now. Enough is enough. And when is enough enough? And I just have one, I guess sort of a moral objection to this whole thing also is the cost. I spend my life in my work day working with marginalized people, people with mental illness, people who are homeless, people who are hungry, people who don't have medical care, kids that are in trouble, domestic violence, all that kind of stuff. And there's, so far as I'm concerned, there's a direct relationship between the blank check that the military has to build up these kinds of things and the deterioration of those social services that go on in this country. And I agree with some of the other speakers that money could be spent much more wisely for peaceful endeavors instead of warlike endeavors. Those helicopters are not meant to protect the environment. If I understand it correctly, their job is to destroy the environment. They have bullets and bombs and guns and they blow things up. And that's the mission of those. And when the Army has environmental specialists, I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to sell us with this particular thing, but as just an ordinary citizen, it sure goes over my head. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Peter Springer, followed by Esther Kinsmore.
Peter Sprunger-Fraser, last name is S-P-R-U-N-G-E-R F-R-O-E-S-E. I too will not reiterate what has been said. The reference to enough is enough was paramount in my speech, and now I don't need to say that thanks to a number of other references made to that. So I will only say that years ago it was deemed by the system that we would finally be secure when we had our first nuclear bomb. Alas, it didn't do that. The bomb didn't do that. The escalation continues, and we know that has been driven totally by the profit world, and of course by the sacred cow called national security that provides a justification for this. I believe there is another way to look at this, and I have never seen a military intellectual even begin to look at the likes of political scientist Gene Sharp, who was deeply inspired by the likes of our dear Martin Luther King, by the likes of Mahatma Gandhi, and said there is a way that we can all live on this planet for one another, for one another's benefit, without anybody being at a disadvantage. And this is what I believe is the paradigm that we need to explore and can explore. It's called the power of love.
Thank you, sir. All right, this is Esther Kinsmore, followed by Mr. Steve Wooten.
Esther Kaisamore, K-I-S-A-M-O-R-E. Some of the writing isn't always too clear, I guess. First of all, I just want to say that I really want to be supportive of the ranchers in the southeast Colorado. We have been a part of that movement, I think, since we first were aware of it. And I will just be very, very brief. Each year when we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr., I am always disappointed because nothing is ever mentioned from his speech, April 4th, 1967, at the Riverside Church. And I just want to end with his quote. A nation that continues year after year to spend more on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. And I think it's something we really need to think about in this city, this state, this county, and this country. Thank you.
Mr. Steve Wooten, followed by Mr. Randy Gradishar.
Steve Wooten, W-O-O-T-E-N. And in beginning, in the initial expansion in the 1970s, the Army's first proposal was to acquire lands in El Paso and Pueblo County. Both communities fervently opposed expansion that would have made Fort Carson contiguous with its new lands. What you did is shove it down our throats in southeast Colorado. You had a chance to show your loyalty in 1979 and 1980, and you pushed it on us. We've borne that black hole in our lives for 30 years. Now, to the EA. In section 4.5.1.2.2, the soils unit, there's a paragraph in there that I read through it and I kind of went on reading and I came back and I went, I can't stomach that one. And I'll read it. Contributing factors leading to soil erosion at the Pinon Canyon manure site are much different than those at Fort Carson. Soil erosion caused by water typically is a result of larger storms, more than ½ inch, which occur on the average of less than 6 days per year in any given year. However, the fine and silty nature of some of the predominant soil types and dry conditions mean that Pinon Canyon manure site is more susceptible to wind-based erosion than water erosion for most of the year, with the exception of a limited number of days of heavy rainstorm. Here's where I have the problem. Extensive overgrazing prior to 1983, vegetation removal and soil compaction for mechanized training have contributed to that erosion and erosion potential. This paragraph is not annotated. And so I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but I went back into the reference section.
You can ask him.
And I went through your reference section, and there is nothing in here by any of the topics that gives you methodology, the name of the scientist, and the means by which that conclusion was reached in that paragraph, line 11 through 18. So I'm asking today, tell me the scientist that did that study that came to the conclusion that that land was overgrazed. Because failing to have that scientific methodology explained to us and showing that it was done over a period of time, plant physiology was taken into consideration, timing of grazing, timing of the study, everything that we do as natural resource managers, that's a dangerous statement. Furthermore, it desecrates the memory of the ranching families that were displaced from their ranches in 1983 many times by the use of U.S. Marshals. When a rancher overgrazes, he goes out of business. When the expansion occurred, those ranches were in business. They still had resources. They were managing their resources in a sustainable manner that kept them in business. They suffered periods where calf prices, you lost $60 a head on every calf. Then when they got to the other side of the cycle, they hoped to break even and service the bank. It's shameful to use an anecdotal opinion statement in a scientific document. We demand, PCOC and members in opposition, that this as well as other anecdotal opinion statements be removed from this document. And if it fails to meet the test of scientific need, the EA itself is flawed, and we need to move to an EIS where we will annotate and go to scientific methodology. In contrast, the private citizens in 2011 commissioned Colorado Natural Heritage Program to conduct a biodiversity study on the lands around the Pinon Canyon Maneuver Site in Huerfano, Los Animas, and Otero counties.
1 minute.
I'll try to read fast. In their executive summary, and this can be found on the website of the Colorado Natural Heritage Program at CSU, overall, the condition of the biological resources in the study area is excellent, and current management appears compatible with biodiversity in most places. This area harbors the largest intact working landscape remaining not only on Colorado's eastern plains, but also in the entire shortgrass prairie region. The Shortgrass Prairie Partnership, annotated by Neely et al., has identified this area as having high landscape integrity, very high conservation value, a testament to the quality of management by the landowners in that area. In the subsequent addendum to the West region by CNHP, in that executive summary of 2009, Southeast Colorado is positioned at a crossroads of several different biographic units. Many species found in Southeast Colorado are more common to the Chihuahuan Desert. Here they are mostly in their northern range. Species from the southern plains occur here, the Edwards Plateau, as there is no sharp boundaries between these biogeographic units. Representatives from all these zones mix. The vast majority of this study is privately owned. With the loss of the prairie's most significant grazer, the bison, cattle grazing has become a crucial ecological process for maintaining habitat condition on the prairie. The number of places supporting species and habitats of conservation concern is a testament to the ongoing stewardship of Colorado's ranching families. The future of this landscape rests in their hands.
Thank you, Mr. Wooden. All right, Mr. Randy Bradshar. To be followed by Mr. Chuck Murphy. Mr. Murphy, you're in bonus time, meaning that you're the first addition after the original sign-up list. Go ahead, sir.
Randy Gradishar, Gradishar. I'm here tonight supporting our troops in a partnership while preserving Colorado Springs and down to Trinidad, and preserving and keeping all so that our military and we as a nation will be still the most powerful military in the world. My only qualifications: my dad served in World War II and had a couple uncles. I was in 2 years at ROTC, at Ohio State University. Had other uncles, and I got a brother-in-law who is a mentally disabled Vietnam vet. And so those are my qualifications, along with just being a Colorado citizen and resident. I agree that the environment is certainly critical, and believe that we, as of Colorado, of here in Colorado Springs down to Trinidad, that if we can't achieve a workable plan that protects our environment along with our freedoms. I do know a little bit about training and practice, and certainly have a little bit of appreciation for what our military, not just here at Fort Carson, but our military around our country stands for. I've had the opportunity to been in 3 different trips over to Iraq and Afghanistan and Qatar and Emirates, and thanking our troops, seeing the sacrifice, as you all know, what that cost and what that sacrifice is to our families, to our military, as we here in the United States. And I'm proud of our military, just as you are. And someone had mentioned, a young lady had mentioned Trinidad. Trinidad is the city of champions. I'm from Champion, Ohio. I don't know if anybody knows or cares. But the word champion defines itself. Champions, and we are all champions in this room and here in Colorado Springs and in Colorado. Champions are warriors, defenders, advocates, support. So as champions, I believe we can all be teammates, because we're all champions. And as a community, developing that partnership, that community, that everyone can win. And we can win with our protection, with an environmental protection, along with we can win, continue to win with our freedom. And you can count on me that I will be praying for God's decision for us here in Colorado and the people here in Colorado Springs and all the people that it affects, that we have God's decision and not ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Mr. Chuck Murphy. So, how's it going, sir?
That's M-U-R-P-H-Y. I'm glad that you finally called my name. I need to go to the bathroom in a few minutes. I was born and raised in Colorado Springs. I'm a general contractor, own property in Trinidad. Love the environment. One of my passions is photography. I'm also a confirmed realist. I wish there wasn't any wars. I wish there wasn't an Iraq and an Afghanistan. I'm not sure that they were necessary. At least one of them wasn't, I don't believe. I greatly appreciate the military. I have a son who spent 6 years in the Navy. I was in the Navy Reserves myself. And every time I see a soldier, I thank him for their service. As a realist, I believe that Pinon Canyon will be a helicopter facility. I don't think there's any escaping it. And so I think the big thing is to work with the Army and to work with the environmentalists and make sure that it's protected. And I think that you being here this evening speaks volumes about the protection you expect to have. For you cattle ranchers, I want you to know that I have 95 head of Black Angus cows and over 200 head of Boer goats. So I know a little bit about, not much, but a little bit about the cattle business too. So I'm proud to be here. I'm certainly proud of our soldiers. I've come in contact with a number of them at Fort Carson and at Trinidad. And it's, you know, years ago, the first time our country was attacked was in Hawaii. And the second time was attacked was in 9/11. Years ago, all of our focus was on the outside of our boundaries. And now it's necessary for our focus to be inside the boundaries as well. I wish it wasn't necessary to have all these defenses, but the world is what it is today, and it's the one that we have to live in. And I believe we can do it together. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, it's 7:45 p.m. right now. I have a list of, it's like 4 people. Next in the queue is Mr. Tom Warren.
Thanks, Rob. My name's Tom Warren, W-A-R-R-E-N. It's good to see a lot of folks here that I've seen or haven't seen in a while. It's good to see you again, too. One of the points I just want to make is echo the comments of the last speaker. Fort Carson, right, wrong, or different, believed or not believed, has a righteous history of being environmental stewards. And they've done that through involvement and engagement with individuals. And that's you all, whether it's these public meetings or some of the ones that started 6 years ago in different places, and the demographic was a couple of 600 times more than this, maybe, if you remember, Rob. The comment I just want to give you is while you're looking at any NEPA document, understand that it is a living document. Perception is indeed reality to some, but I always add, except to the apathetic, which never seek the real truth. And that truth has a tendency to change depending on what the issue is and how burning it is at the time. But I will tell you that in the case of the Department of Defense, they are required, just as a part of this NEPA process, to involve the public in the stewardship of that public trust. And in this case, that can be found in the action documents called an Integrated Natural Resource Management Plan, an Integrated Cultural Resource Management Plan, the Integrated Training Area Management Plan. And in this era of ever-increasing fiscal austerity, one has to look, and I would suggest to you, and my only qualification for saying this is about 37 years doing it before today, is that you have to look at the deployment and implementation of those documents in order to hold anyone accountable, whether it's Colonel McLaughlin or any of the 13 environmentalists or resource stewardship personnel that were identified earlier. That is where the rubber meets the road, at least from my perspective, in the day in and day out implementation of both the inherently legitimate military training mission, and more importantly, the resource stewardship and sustainability of that environmental resource upon which that mission depends. Thanks, Rob.
All right, Mr. Joseph Rhea.
10% of your money.
Ray?
Ray.
Yes. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll submit my written comments.
Thank you, sir.
And keep it very specific and very close. My special interest, I have a special interest group, I'll confess. My special interest group are my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, who are residents of the state of Colorado, and their stake in the success and advancement of Colorado Springs stems from their concern about jobs and about an economy in this state that's strong. With respect to the environmental impact statement itself, I'm a little stumped, I must admit, with all the concern
about these short grass prairie grasses. Since less than 40% of that grass coverage is native in terms of the original prairie grass. It wasn't there and isn't. Now it's important, of course, with respect to the economy of this state, that agriculture remain a major effort. But I will confine my remarks to a few short statements about the economic impact of ranching in the area that we're talking about. Excuse me while I reach that. In cattle and calves inventory, Los Animas County, with its vast acreage and its 321 farms and ranchers, musters an inventory of less than 50,000 cattle and calves each year, with a net cash income of $677,000 for all farming and ranching operations.
How much cattle does Fort Carson offer?
Only 30,165 acres of the 2.5 million acres in Los Animas County produces harvested crops. Even more interesting, 154 of these farms and ranches in Los Animas County receive about $1.5 million in government payments, more than 10% of all government payments made to all of agriculture in the state of Colorado. Talk about feeding the U.S. and Colorado taxpayers' public trough. Someone asked where my statistics come from. It comes from the Department of Agriculture.
We've seen those numbers. They don't jive.
Well, they may not, but that's your problem and your responsibility with your agricultural representatives to see that they do.
Didn't we have rules about insults, about trading insults?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ray. Not gonna have any hair left after this. Not much there now. Okay, Ms. Rebecca Goodwin.
My name is Rebecca Goodwin, Goodwin. In the last couple nights I've spoken at these meetings about the historic resources, and I'm not going to bring that up again tonight, so I'm not going to give everybody a heart attack. I will say, to start off, my father and grandfather both served in the Navy, World War I, World War II. My brother-in-law served in Vietnam, and his grandson gave his life in Iraq, so we do understand. My father also has spent 97 years on the same ranch. And I'm just going to give you a few statistics, and these are from the Colorado Ag Census and the USDA Ag Census. In Colorado, in 2010, Colorado ag exports increased 20% to $718 million. The top 3 ag commodities, edible beef, increased 21% to $389.9 million, and hides increased 20% to $131 million. Beef exports to Japan, if we want to look at our economy, increased 21% to $71.6 million. We worry about our export and our trade deficits. Look at agriculture. We're making that difference. Our exports to Korea in 2010 increased 31% to $46.3 million. La Junta is the United States' second largest cattle market in the country. And in 2010, $111 million of cattle were sold in Otero County. Now, we make a difference, and we are a big part of Colorado's economy. This cab and what goes on down there in this expansion will adversely affect our lives, our economy, the economy of Colorado, and who feeds our soldiers. Thank you.
All right, we have time for one last person, and that will be Mr. Stan White.
Stan White, W-H-I-T-E. That's some of you folks in the back of the room might know me as Bill Smith, but that just depends on. America's already got the strongest military in the world. We've been doing a great job on our troops, haven't we? Mr. McLaughlin, great job. A great job. Why do we need another 6.9 million acres? And we've already got, if you Google it, 25 to 38 million. If we got to have more, we need some new help. I'll get done with them kind of snide comments in a minute.
Can you get them out of front?
If the EA were to pass, there are a couple of things that would happen. Without question, Fort Carson and Colorado Springs would grow by several thousand people. You've all seen that on the news lately. Several thousand people would also be removed from southeast Colorado by the Army's own documents, somewhere around 17,500. It would not happen initially. It would happen over a period of 15 to 20 years. By the Army's own forecast. If you'd like to see that, you get on the PCEOC website and you will be shown that in their own document. Those who would support this expansion, aside from you boys in the fatigues, I know why you're doing it, don't blame you. The rest of you, I would suggest, before you say I ought to give up what I've got, what I've worked for, what my family's worked for 5 generations, consider giving up your home, your job, in its entirety. Get the heck out of Dodge. Just go on and get out of here. Whatever your business may be, show us you're a hero. This EA is deeply flawed and would never withstand judicial review. That's on the EA. I tell you, read it. It's laughable. There's a problem. I'll give you a solution. Contact your politicians. That's where it's at. That's the cheapest way to get this thing done. They hold the purse strings. It don't happen unless they say it's going to happen. That's kind of weird, but that's the way it works. Thank you.
All right. Mr. White was our last speaker. Sir, your closing comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you for your patience. I'd like to especially thank my friends from the South for making the trip up here to participate in this process. I've told you at the end of every meeting that I am proud of the process. I guess at the heart of it is the accountability through this process, that we that are trying to balance training in the environment owe those who have concerns. So specifically the comments about the environmental assessment, I said at the beginning, this is the beginning of the process. You have said, many of you have said there are flaws in the existing draft document. We will continue to work together to make sure that we are in compliance. I did tell you at the beginning that the Army has made a decision to station the Combat Aviation Brigade at Fort Carson. What we owe all concerned parties is that we do it in environmental compliance, that we listen to what you say is part of this formal process. But probably even more important than that is there were comments about balance, about balancing the training of our troops with the preservation of the environment. That's all parts of the environment, noise, the skies, the cultural resources, the sustainable lands. So we will work with you to do that. And I did say that I was proud of the process. I'm especially proud of the relationships that we continue to build with concerned parties and people in and around Pinon Canyon. We'll continue to do that. We will make sure that this process from the environmental assessment is statutorily correct. As we go forward,